Univega, a storied name in cycling, and they're back with this Rover RM29 mountain bike assembled in the USA. A lot of people interested in this bike, a lot of questions about it and the Able core over there, both available at mendombikes.com. Great deals. This Univega Rover RM29, $284.99, even less if you use the coupon code KevCentral. Given the price and the specs, this is a good entry-level mountain bike. And I mean, real mountain bike for entry-level riders for under $271 with the coupon code. I went over all the specs, but there are more questions. I've written them down here, and we're going to cover them in this video from top to bottom, front to back. The top viewer questions about the Rover RM29. We're going to start up top, not at the bars, but talking about the overall weight, because this bike weighs 33.5 pounds. People have asked why the Able core only weighs 31. Where did the extra weight come from? Well, first and foremost, I mean, they are different bikes, so it's kind of like comparing a Honda Civic and a Toyota Corolla. That said, I think with one exception, they would weigh pretty much the same, and that exception is up front at the fork. Because the Able core has an XCM 30, this Rover RM29 has an XCM 32 boost. We'll come back to that boost, but first the 32, that's from the stanchions. These are 32 millimeters wide versus 30 millimeters, and that's still... These tubes have to be larger. That's extra weight. That extra weight's going to add up to an extra couple of pounds, which gets them pretty close. But there are a few little extra differences like hydraulic brakes. The cassette material's a little different. So pretty much the same if you count out the fork and those other little small intangibles. But this fork, it's worth the weight to get the extra 32 millimeter stanchions and to get a through axle. Yes, a through axle. Viewers noticed that this says XCM 32 boost, and I mentioned boost. I said boost fork, but then I said 15 by 100. That doesn't add up. Boost would be 15 by 110 up here. So what happened? Well, a couple of things. First and foremost, when I unboxed this, I did so at 7:15 a.m., with the need to be on the trail by 8 a.m., I had a very set schedule that day, so I rushed this together. I did notice when I was putting it together, it said 15 by 100 on the through axle, and this said boost, but by the time I got to the trail and I pedaled with my mountain bike conditioning level this up the trail, you could even hear it in my voice, which I recorded in real time as I was going over the components. I wanted you to hear my true excitement, or if I had any letdowns, my true letdowns. But when it got to this fork, I said XCM 32 boost and just kept going, and then mentioned boost multiple times. I mentioned 15 by 100. I know the difference. I just had a brain fart, and I kept going with it. And even more bizarrely, when I was editing the video a couple of days later and did the final voiceover, I just carried right on. I guess I kept hearing myself say it, and I kept going right along. But I do want to clarify, this fork does say XCM 32 boost, but that's a 15 by 100 through axle. Doesn't really degrade from anything. We are going from quick release to this through axle, the 15 by 100, stronger. A lot of people look for something like this over a standard quick release. Not that the standard quick release doesn't work anymore. They work for decades. They still do. But this is better. It would have been even better if it was boost. It is not. But I don't think anyone is ever going to see something technically rolling around with a fork that says boost. People will think that it is boost. I don't know of anyone that would be able to glance at this and go, there's 10 millimeters missing down there. So at least you get that, but it does beg the question, what happened? Well, I do have one contact at SR Sun Tour, so I reached out to them with that exact question. They had me give them the serial number for this fork. They ran it, they gave me the true model number, and basically said, oops, that sticker shouldn't be on there with the boost labeling. That was a factory mistake. Nice of them to own up to it. Still curious that it happened, but at least it does say boost, so a little faux flash for the bike, but I did want to correct this because that was inaccurate. That is a 15 by 100 through axle, not boost, but the fork does say boost. Straight steer tube there, a straight steer here, but a couple of people are caught up because this does taper in and then back out. There is technically a taper here, but it's not the taper that you want in a mountain bike, which is something like this. You can see how the difference here is significant. This tapers down and it doesn't come back in at the bottom. This does, and if you compare up here to down here, they're the exact same measurement. This is a straight steerer. You know, one benefit to that though is it's practically impossible to find a boost fork with a straight steer, but finding one with a through axle and a straight steer, very possible, so there's that too. Kind of a plus for this tapering but not tapered head tube. Bottom bracket size, that tells me some of you are already thinking external bearing bottom bracket. I like your thinking. I measured it. This is a 68 millimeter bottom bracket. Let's talk about this cassette. People have asked, just like on the Able Core, they have seen on the internet where people are saying this is a freewheel. Well, I actually have the bike. I can touch all the parts, and I can tell you this is a cassette. I'll show you here where I verified taking it apart. I mean, that is unmistakably a cassette, but I did make a discovery while I was taking this apart. It says on the website, and I said in my video, 11 to 34 tooth. Well, it turns out this is an 11 to 36 tooth cassette. That makes it a little better. Not enough better that my e-mountain bike conditioning level could notice the extra 2 teeth, but technically, I guess, probably I was huffing a little less than I would have been, so that makes the drivetrain slightly better than I initially thought. And it's a cassette. Again, I want to stress that. This is a cassette. That means there's a free hub. That easily goes on. I think I can even show you here. Putting it back on the cassette. Are you sure you can't put a dropper post on this? Well, it doesn't have factory dropper provisioning, meaning no hole to run the cable internally out of, but this can be upgraded if you want to use an external cable or if you want to make your own hole and your own guides up. It won't be that clean because there's only one port over here and one over here, so nowhere to come out. And going inside down at the bottom, well, you can see there's not really any way there. You just have that port that's set up as it is. But technically, you could drill a hole or just run an external dropper and have a dropper on this bike. It's just not going to be that clean internal factory routing. The seat post diameter, if you want to know, 30.9. There's a look down inside at the seat post guts. People like to see the bike guts. And also, this saddle, unlike that Able Core, will go down almost all of the way. Just about an inch or two, a couple inches there. So at its lowest position on this medium frame, we're looking at, what's that, about 34.5 inches. Let me come back here, not to look at the cassette, but to talk about rear spacing. I said this looked like 135. I have measured. It is, in fact, 135. And I have some official geometry specs straight from Mendham Bike, straight from Kent, actually, that runs all of that. So let's talk about the numbers for this Rover. Starting at the top tube, effective length 599 millimeters. The down tube, now this is the new one on me. They gave me some very detailed specs here. 713.75 millimeters. I've never had a point millimeter given for a down tube length, so 714 is what I'm going to say. Head tube length 100 millimeters. I give that, and some people say, why do you give head tube length? Why does it matter? Well, it matters if you have a spare fork or you're ordering a fork. Not all forks have the steerer tube to be the same length. Some are very tall, some are shorter. So it matters, and that is 100 millimeters. Okay, well, what about the head tube angle? The head tube angle on this bike, 68 degrees. Seat tube angle, 73.2 degrees. Seat stay length, 415 millimeters. Chain stay, 430 millimeters. That's the geometry specs for this Univega Rover RM29. And just for comparison, I'll put on your screen, hopefully I don't forget to do this, with both the numbers for the Able Core and this Univega Rover RM29 side by side, and you'll be able to see what I experienced and mentioned when I did my video review, my initial ride on both of these bikes. They ride slightly different. Well, that's thanks to the geometry. This finish is beautiful, and so far, it's holding up quite well. I have a little scratch there. I think it came out of the box with that, but otherwise, this finish is practically flawless. It is beautiful, but someone said, just like the supposed freewheel that's actually a cassette, not a freewheel, someone said that they had read online from multiple sources that these were stickers. Well, I have the bike. I can touch it right in front of me, and I can tell you that is not a sticker. It's probably screened or hot. There's a hot something, I forget the name for putting this on. But it's either that or it's clear coated over. None of these are stickers, so you're not going to be able to just peel them off. But I think it looks pretty good, like it is. No need to do that. And I really like that. I mentioned in my video, it just looks so classy down there. It's a classy looking bike. Finally, I want to talk about tires, more specifically tire width and what can be supported on this bike. These are 2.35, but you can see there is room here to go wider, but for some reason I've had people asking on both this and the Able Core about 2.6 inch tires. That's a beefy tire. And even though there is space there and some space there and then down at the bottom, I would say definitely not for a 2.6. As a matter of fact, 2.35 would be as wide as I would ever go, not just because of the frame, but because of the bike rims, these wheels, which I will take off and just show you how easy it is to get a wheel off with this through axle. Just unthreads and then comes right out. Yeah, pretty simple. And with the wheel, there's no fiddling with springs or anything like that. It just lifts straight up. Very simple. One of the benefits of a through axle. You can see there's room, but you can also see that kind of ballooning out of the tire where it has to significantly curve in here to fit on this rim. Again, this is a 2.35. And if I remove the Kendas from the rim using my Bontrager, I reviewed these Bontragers available at Trek dealers, these tire levers. I think they're the best ones I've ever used, at least in the budget. They were under $5. Let's look at this rim. This internal width, which you can already see is pretty small. I knew the size before I even measured it, but I'm going to show you. The internal lip width is 19.3, so essentially this is a 19 millimeter internal lip rim width. You can do what you want with whatever you have, but I won't put larger than a 2.35 on these because, as I mentioned, you can already see how far out that has bulged just with the inflation, and this is a 2.35 tire. Definitely the widest I would go. Most certainly would not try a 2.6 on this. There we go, all the juicy details and key questions answered regarding this Univega Rover RM29. A really good bike at just a crazy deal, even cheaper with that coupon code KevCentral. And one last add-in here. This did not come with the dork disc. Usually they come on bikes. This one did not have one out of the box. But that's all the questions. If you have any more, feel free to ask them. I'll be happy to give you any details I can while I still have the bike. So get them in quick. Thanks for watching and have a great day.